So this is just a short one for tonight, but it is something that I think needs to be addressed, and it's in relation to one of Janie's lies. And there's no way about it. It is an outright lie. Now, this is actually based on one of Durwood's narratives that he put out there. So, for that reason, I was going to play Durwood's audio for it, but instead I've decided to go with Daniel's version. So, this is kind of like one of the final evolutions of Durwood's story, and I can work back from there.
You know, there's some interesting things that have been said that, I was talking to Darren once as well, and he mentioned that when he was talking to Malaya, that there was, before the disappearance, there was conversation of her with the family talking about potentially leaving you. And that when he went and spoke to her, like, hey, is this true? She said, don't worry about it. I got another plan, or something to that nature. And
yeah, I can tell you the actual story on that if you want to hear it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I know Darren too, so.
Yeah, how from your point of view, how did that go down?
And okay. Patty, which is Malaya's grandmother, asked Darren, I don't think Malaya wants to be with Daniel anymore. This was 2 weeks prior.
Yeah.
Do you think, Darren, you can go and get Malaya? Darren's like, no, I'm not breaking up in a relationship. Like, that's a relationship. Like, I'm not going to get involved in somebody else's, life, right?
Right.
Which makes sense. That was a smart thing by Darren to do. So this is 2 weeks prior. And so then Patty calls Malaya and asks Malaya, if you ever just want to, get away, you can come live with me. And then that's when Malaya said, no, Patty, I have a different plan.
Hmm.
And this was told to me by Darren, which had access to both sides of the family, right?
Yeah.
The only person that had access to both sides is Darren and the investigators.
Huh.
So.
Do you think that any dogs or any searches are going to...
And also, Daniel, I want to add to that. This is backed up in the court case with Meadow. And in one of the affidavits, it does state that Malaya wanted to leave 2 weeks prior, but then decided to stay. So that's some evidence that backed that up.
So I think it's worth noting, though, that in his latest versions of this, Durwood has removed this story completely, and now his version is that he spoke to Patty a few weeks before the children went missing about her purchasing the vehicle for Malaya, which is also a lie because it was like early April, from my understanding, that vehicle was bought. But what the evolution is here, when Durwood started telling this story, he said that Patty had asked him to go and check on Malaya because Jack was getting bruised up and she was worried that Daniel was hurting him. Various versions of the story. So in one version, he said to Patty, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to interfere in their relationship. There's another version where they contacted Malaya and she said, no, I'm not going. And that's where you get the introduction of, she said, no, I've got a plan. But of course, in Daniel's version here, he avoids any mention of him injuring Jack or anything like that. It's very, very nicely cleaned up. What he does mention, though, and I think this is just a typical Daniel strategy, is that, yeah, Malaya was going to leave 2 weeks beforehand, and this is backed up by a sworn statement in the CPS thing or something like that. Well, we know that Daniel involved Durwood with that. Durwood claims that he was on like a conference call over that, like over the CPS stuff. For all we know, Durwood could have been called in as a witness by Daniel's side of the family and could have basically given his made-up story as part of the CPS thing. So I wouldn't put too much stock on that. But also, it's like him with his, I saw on the forms that it said no criminal involvement when he was giving blood for the DNA stuff. So I wouldn't take it as rock solid him claiming that, yeah, there's a sworn statement that backs this up, because either it could be something from Durwood, in which case it's probably a lie also, or Daniel could just be outright lying, like he did with the seeing this imaginary writing on the forms when he gave his blood for the DNA. But we know that the whole purpose of this narrative is to establish the idea that Malaya was already planning on getting out, and she was planning on getting out with the kids. And Durwood took this to an extreme in that as his story evolved, the final evolution before the most recent lot of interviews was that he thinks Malaya was also going to get in the vehicle with Meadow when she put the children in a vehicle to be taken away, but she was interrupted and she didn't get to go. So essentially, Durwood's whole narrative here is that Malaya has got the kids hidden away somewhere, that it was planned well ahead of time, and that on that morning when she put the children in the car, she was planning on leaving at the same time, but got interrupted and was like, go, 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 or something like that. Now, we know that the entire story is just a complete utter fabrication. But it's a convenient fabrication for Daniel and Janie, who want to put the entire blame on Malaya and claim innocence on their behalf. And of course, Janie's taken her cues from Durwood and taken on parts of his narrative to help with the we're innocent, Malaya's guilty side of things. Now, let's just establish up front, right here, every single one of those people that was on that property is involved with what happened to Lily and Jack. But every single one of them is claiming, we're innocent, it's the other party who's guilty. Well, they're all scrabbling so hard that they just make themselves look even more guilty. But there's no way on that small property that one person could be oblivious to what happened. So either they're all guilty or they're all innocent. But they would like us all to believe that the opposite party is guilty. Now, Janie originally came out with, basically saying she came out and she saw Malaya standing on the driveway, said, where are the children or something, and Malaya's like, they're missing, and she said, how long, 20 minutes, all that sort of stuff. There was nothing there that was an attempt to incriminate Malaya directly. We had Durwood come up with the shush story, and Belinda believes that she heard Janie say the same thing. Durwood believes that that's what Janie told him. So we have two people saying that they were told the shush story by Janie. We have Janie swearing that she never said that she heard someone say shush. In terms of who I believe between Janie and Belinda, I think that's an easy one. If Belinda believes she heard Janie, or if Belinda believes Janie told her that she heard someone say shush, then I trust Belinda's word on that. Although I should probably add a small caveat there, and that is, given all the conversations that have occurred, there is always that possibility that Janie never said that she heard someone say shush, and that given that Durwood began having conversations with Belinda around the same time that he then hooked up Belinda and Janie for a conversation, I guess there's always the possibility that Durwood said to Belinda, Janie said this, and from hearing him say that and then having a conversation with Janie, that in her head it's got mixed up. I doubt it though, but it's always a possibility. We've got to look at all the possibilities in this case. But Janie has continued to push the whole, well, both her and Daniel have continued to push this whole notion of Malaya hiding the kids somewhere. And over time, as the pressure has increased, as the focus has become more intense on all three of the people that were on that property, seems like they are more willing to tell lies rather than just hint at things. Which is where we come to this lie that Janie recently said on the Vodka Man's channel. Now, I know that before she said this on the Vodka Man's channel, that I've read this from comments probably from her and I think also from Daniel. So it's not a new bit of narrative that's being pushed, but it is an outright lie. So I'm going to play the audio and then I'm going to show you the things that show how much of a lie it is.
If you're such a smart man, figure it out. Do your research. She goes to do her laundry on Wednesday over at her grandmother's. She comes back with no clothes. The next thing you know, I'm not supposed to be home Friday morning and the kids go disappearing.
So that story's been circulating for months, even before Janie came out and said it on the Vodka Man's channel. Basically, the allegations were that when Malaya went to Paddy's on the Wednesday to do laundry, that she brought all the children's clothes back, but not her own, and that after the children went missing, there was absolutely nothing of Malaya's left at the house. Now, first of all, let's apply a little bit of logic here. If your plan is to hide your children somewhere and also leave yourself, which is what we're supposed to believe, then if you go to your grandmother's place and do laundry on the Wednesday, given that you're allegedly going to hide your children somewhere, why would you bring their clothes back? Surely, if the plan was for everybody to exit on Friday, why not just say, hey, I'm going to leave the clothes and collect them on the weekend because they're not properly dry or something like that. But seriously, if the plan was to hide the children first, wouldn't that be your first focus, to actually make sure you got their clothes away, not your own? That said, it's a moot point because we know this is an outright lie from Janie and that Malaya didn't take all her clothes and leave them at Paddy's place. So I'm going to go through a few bits of audio and then I've got some other screenshots to show you.
Malaya planned the baby was going to go with Logan. There was a lot of give me the baby, I'm taking the baby, and then you can come too. And it was kind of Malaya, I spoke to her and I was like, why don't you go with your mom? She wasn't made to go with her mom. As her sister, I could see what was right and what was wrong in that moment. And they were trying to persuade her to stay with the baby. And I told her that she really needs to sit and think what's best for her and the baby at this time. And she ended up going with her mom, and that was willingly. It was nobody talking her in to go. I'm just you have a home, you'll be treated right, there'll be food, there'll be love, you know what I mean?
Because when I got there, I said, do you want me to stay with the baby? You can go look. She goes, I'm going to stay with the baby. Okay, said whatever. So I went looking. So that was the next thing, was when when she was told that the baby had to leave the residence. She's exactly told she did not have to leave the residence. They just wanted the baby off the residence, from the residence. As this whole scenario isn't something a kid should be a part of. So the baby was going to come to my house. So she's never been apart from the baby. She's meadow. I said, you're more than welcome to come too. If not, I am comfortable. I have 3 kids of my own. Like Malaya, I can take care of this kid. I can take care of the baby, no problem. So first the baby, it was just going to be the baby. And then she decided she was going to come with me. So, but then something changed and we were at the briefing. Her mother said something to her. And then I had to take everything out of my car and put it in her mother's car.
Now, I will give it to her. I know Foggy has had some less than reliable witnesses on in the last 12 months, but she did at least have these brief clips with Hayley and Cheryl and Logan. And what makes this so good is because we're getting perspectives from both sides. And when you get people from opposite sides agreeing on something, you know that that is truthful. So the story we've been given here from both Hayley and Logan is that the agreement was that Meadow was going to go to Logan's place, and then originally it was just going to be Meadow going with Logan, and then because Malaya hadn't ever been separated from Meadow, then Logan was like, well, you can come too. So then the agreement was that Malaya was going to go to Logan's place with Meadow. Logan and Hayley both agree on this. And Logan then mentions she had to get all Malaya's stuff out of her car and put it into Cindy's car. When you get details like that, you know it's a truthful story. Because when it's a made-up narrative, you get over-explanations of mundane things, things that aren't important, but you don't get the finer details explained. So the fact that Logan here is explaining that she had to take the things out of her car so that they could be put in Cindy's car and then Malaya could leave shows that, yes, this is a truthful story. The thing with this is that this shows that there was no plan for Malaya to put the kids in a car and then leave herself. And that because of that, none of her clothes were actually at the property because she hadn't brought anything back with her from Paddy's. You just need to apply a little bit of logic here to see that, no, there was never any plan by Malaya to take off because she was going to go and stay with Logan. So if there was any plan for her to take off, then you would not expect that she would be agreeing to go and stay with Logan. Now we know that Malaya left directly from the briefing. Hayley and Cheryl and a few others went back to the trailer to collect Malaya's phone and also to try and get her vehicle. But it sounds like things got pretty tense there because if you remember, there was a discussion between, I think, Cheryl and Logan where they pointed out that there was another altercation when they turned up for that. So it seems like there would have been no opportunity whatsoever for Malaya's clothes to be collected. And from listening to the conversation of, well, Meadow was going to go with Logan and then Malaya was going to go with them as well. Like I said, had the plan been that she was going to, take off when the children were offloaded and that she therefore had no clothes on the property, then you wouldn't expect that she would agree to go to Logan's. But anyway, let's hear what Daniel has to say about this, because he has successfully proven Janie to be a liar. Preemptively, I should say. Okay, I have to apologise first. This is a bit blurry. This is the best version I've got of it. So this is from Sunny's channel. I believe this must have been one of Daniel's messages to Sunny. And the thing is, what is happening here is, and you get this with Janie too, trying to push one part of the narrative, and because it is just a narrative, it's all made up, it basically destroys another part of the narrative. Like Daniel with his, I offered him my phone and I offered to do a polygraph test, yada yada, and then saying to the media another time that they had seized his and Malaya's phone. Same sort of thing. So here he's saying, I only wish I could tell you fine details surrounding Malaya and her family in the disappearance. I'll let you know that Malaya was set to stay with me and the baby to leave with my cousin. But 5 minutes alone with her mother, after the first search briefing, Malaya completely changed. She couldn't even look at me. An hour before this, Malaya told RCMP she felt happiest and safest with me. It was a different Malaya. Now, I do question this story of 5 minutes beforehand she said she was happiest with him or something, happiest and safest. But here, he is saying that Malaya was set to stay with him and that the baby was going to go with his cousin. So again, he's showing there was no intention for Malaya to sneak away. There was no intention of leaving all her clothes at Paddy's place so then she could do a quick escape. Now, you could argue that, well, maybe the plan changed because she got caught when she put the children in the car and it wasn't going to work because they had created the narrative of the children wandering off. Yeah, no, because this is just the tip of it when it comes to what Daniel has shared. So the goal here, of course, is to make Cody look bad. So that's the priority. So he's not thinking about anything else that he might say about Malaya here. So this is from Daniel, but I'm not sure who this was sent to. I can't even remember where I got this from because, you know, we've had so many things circulating, but it is something that was shared, I believe, possibly with a content creator and has been put out multiple places. So Daniel's saying, I have Malaya's court documents at the house from the custody battle with Cody. Malaya left all her belongings at the house. The documents say awful stuff about Cody. So here he's trying to make Cody look bad, but he's made it pretty clear here Malaya left all her belongings at the house. Well, that just craps all over Janie's story, doesn't it? But just in case, there is one more statement from Daniel. So this is something that he posted on Facebook on one of the groups. She did the same thing to me which she did with Cody, or to Cody. She just left. She left her belongings. She's been slowly asking investigators to come get this or that, but she just doesn't care. So it seems that Janie and Daniel probably should compare stories before they actually open their mouths and put anything out there publicly. Because Janie's whole story of, yeah, Malaya left all her clothes at Paddy's and she didn't bring any clothes back with her, has just been thoroughly blown to smithereens. But not only that, that story was put in place to try and convince people that Malaya had planned all this ahead of time and that she had been intending on jumping in the same vehicle that she put her children into. But we know that's not true either because both Logan and Hayley and Daniel destroyed that part of the narrative also. So it seems that these people get so focused on trying to push one part of the narrative that they don't stop and try and apply any logic to what it is they are trying to push in the first place. Because so many of their stories can be easily debunked, just like this one. At the end of the day, when you look at all the information we have, when you look at all the statements that we've seen or heard, it seems like there's no doubt that these children did not leave the property alive. They were never put in a car and sent off somewhere to be safe. Something happened on that Thursday evening. Something that Janie, Malaya and Daniel all know about and have been covering up for the past almost 12 months. But here's the thing. Janie has been so focused on trying to come up with stories that aren't truthful, that are going to throw Malaya in a bad light, to try and show that her and Daniel are innocent. But of course you can strip her stories apart really easily. She would have done much better to actually focus on how to minimise the charges against herself. Daniel, I don't think there's any chance of minimising the charges against him, but Janie is in a position where she could ensure that Malaya did face charges also, and she could make sure that she received minimal consequences. All she has to do is speak to the RCMP and tell them what happened, or at least as much as she knows. But she's so intent on protecting Daniel that she doesn't realise that her lies are actually making things worse for him, making things worse for her, she should just forget about trying to protect Daniel. What's done is done in terms of he's going to go away for a long time, I believe. Even if it's not over what happened to Lily and Jack, if these charges against him stick, then he's going to go away for a long time. Meanwhile, even though it does seem pretty clear that Malaya had some sort of involvement in all this, that at the very least she knows what happened to her children and has basically lied and hidden out for close to a year to avoid facing consequences. She's working hard to set up a defence for herself here, to create the impression of being an innocent victim. And I've said this countless times before. I'm not trying to minimise her experiences in terms of the DV and the coercive control. I'm not saying that did not happen, and I'm not saying she wasn't a victim of those things. But in terms of what happened to Lily and Jack, she was not a victim. She was a participant. She knew that they were being injured. There are messages between her and Belinda where she says that Daniel targeted Jack and sometimes Lily. So she was aware of it. She sat back and she watched this guy being violent towards her children, but she put her own needs first and kept them in that situation. And yes, I understand that when you're in a relationship like that, it is very hard to get out, and that for many women it takes 30, 40 times before you finally get out. But you know how many women get out because they see something happening with their children? The number of women who actually have that maternal instinct, so that when they see him raise a hand against their child, they're like, right, that's it, I'm out of here. It wasn't a concern for Malaya. But because of her manipulation skills, because of her ability to play the innocent victim, the poor woman who can't even speak out for herself but has to get a friend to speak on her behalf, there is always a possibility that a defence attorney is going to use that to get her off scot-free. So maybe Janie, instead of focusing on making up stories to try and clear Daniel and yourself when they just don't stick, maybe what you should be focusing on is actually speaking to a lawyer and finding out how you can best get out of this. You know, she says that, you know, what went on in that trailer was none of her business. Had nothing to do with her, she didn't know, but then she also admits to it. Well, okay, if she truly believes that it was none of her business, why not let the two people who were in that trailer with those two children face the music? I mean, at the end of the day, if Janie's only involvement in this is providing an alibi for Daniel and Malaya, lying for the sake of protecting Daniel, well, she could get away without any sort of major repercussions if she chose to come forward and actually tell investigators what she knows. But instead, she's coming out with lies like this one that are so easily debunked. So I did say I wanted this to be a short one, and so I'm going to wrap it up here. But I just wanted to put that story to bed once and for all. No, Malaya did not leave all her clothes at Paddy's. That was just an attempt to try and shore up this story of the children being spirited away with someone. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, so thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Of course, please also hit that like button and please leave a comment below. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.